Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Today we're going to be ranking every single unique grenade in Borderlands 2. We have done every unique weapon in Borderlands 2. We have done every unique shield in Borderlands 2. And so today we are ranking every unique grenade in Borderlands 2. Suggested by this lovely commenter here on the YouTube channel. Go subscribe if you haven't already. And so, without further ado, let us get into it. Now, you noticed it with the shields. There are a lot of reused looks to shields, a lot of like reused assets. Yeah, well, it's even worse with grenades. It looks like we've got the same grenade copy and pasted like 9 times here in different ways. But we're going to do our best to try and figure out which one's which and rank all of these in some sort of cohesive tier list. So first things first, we have the Anti-Fection. This is a new grenade. I say new in inverted commas, released in the Fight for Sanctuary DLC. The Anti-Fection is alright. It's okay. There are 2 new grenades, 2 new effervescent rarity grenades released in the Fight for Sanctuary DLC, and the Anti-Fection is definitely the worst of the 2, but it's still not bad. It's basically a fireburst grenade, except instead of just a normal fireburst, it shoots out like rockets in all directions as well. Kind of a bit niche, not, amazing. Firebursts themselves can be good, but when you sort of get up into like OP10 realms, they're you're kind of more looking at either using a slag grenade or a like specialized like Tesla electric grenade sort of thing is going to be your bread and butter. So the Anti-Fection, I'm probably going to sit it solidly up in, I think, B tier. I don't think it deserves to be any lower than that, but this grenade is certainly not amazing. Speaking of amazing grenades, this is the Electric Chair, the other effervescent grenade released in the Fight for Sanctuary DLC, and this grenade is broken. It's basically a how would you describe it? A Tesla grenade on steroids that can also one-shot bosses if aimed correctly. So what happens with this grenade is you sort of throw it out, and then at the point of the grenade, the initial explosion, it shoots out like a load of electric bolts that deal like massive damage, absolutely insane damage, and can like one-shot like smaller adds and also some bosses. This grenade's totally nuts, and then spews out like 8 different Teslas around the place to all leech damage to enemies. This grenade's absolutely fantastic. It's a normal Tesla grenade on steroids. Would highly recommend this grenade for pretty much any build. If you're going to be using a Tesla with like a Grog nozzle for healing late game, this is definitely the grenade you're going to want to be using. Next on the list, we have one of 2, again, identical grenades. The first one we're going to be talking about is the bonus package. This is going to be dropping from one of the first bosses in Borderlands 2, Boom Boom, and with a 10% drop chance, so pretty common from both of them, so technically 20% every time you fight the boss. And the bonus package is just a pretty good tall grenade. It's a standard Merv grenade, only comes in explosive variant, but spits out like a load of child grenades. Can be up to like 10 child grenades, I think, which is pretty good. So for an early game grenade, it is kind of fun to use. Late game sort of falls off a bit, but I find I kind of end up killing myself more than I end up killing enemies. Well, not more than, but as much as I end up killing enemies, just because it spits out so many child grenades that you just end up like getting swamped by them. So I don't think it's a bad grenade, but there's certainly not an awful lot special about it. So I think I'm probably going to stick it... I think I'll stick it in C tier. It's basically just a souped up Merv grenade. Next up, we have the Rolling Thunder, or the Trolling Thunder. This is the grenade where if you get it in a world drop and you see it in the chest before you've actually seen the card icon pop up, you see it here and you think, yes, I've got a bonus package, this will be alright. And then it's a Rolling Thunder and you think, oh god, why did I even bother? It drops from Wilhelm, one of 2 drops from Wilhelm, so it's a 1 in 20 drop, 5% drop chance, which is not great, and you certainly wouldn't want to be farming Wilhelm for this. It's a Merv grenade, except it's always a rubberized variant. Now, rubberized grenades in Borderlands 2 are notoriously bad because of the uneven terrain and actually trying to get them where you want them to go. So this grenade will bounce along the ground, and as it goes, it will explode as it does. Pretty terrible. This one, you definitely end up killing yourself more than you end up killing enemies. So Ooh, do I stick it in F tier or is it going to be E tier? I'll go E tier. It can be decent occasionally if you've got like a corridor and you've got a lot of grouped up ads. It does decent damage. It's like a bonus package, but it's just so unwieldy and so difficult to use. I wouldn't really recommend it. Next up, we have the Bouncing Bonnie. This is a good grenade. What holds it back, first of all, is the fact that it is a world drop only, which is a nightmare. So getting hold of this grenade is difficult. However, if you do manage to randomly acquire one from like a loot midget or just a random chest, something like that, you won't be very disappointed. The one you want to aim for is a slag variant. This can drop in every element. And Bouncing Betties are generally not super strong, unlike they were in Borderlands 1. Bouncing Betties were crazy. In Borderlands 2, they're not super strong. They're mostly used for, sort of call them like assist grenades, like if you've got a slag one to help you slag enemies, or if you've maybe got a corrosive one to help spread like a dot to build up stacks of some things like Krieg's Bloodlust. So the Bouncing Bonnie is certainly not a bad grenade, but trying to get the right one with the right fuse, slag variant is probably the one you're going to want to go for. It's tricky, so there's definitely better things out there, but I'm not going to be too disappointed if I get a Bouncing Bonnie. Probably going to stick it in C tier. Yeah, C tier. Next up on the list, we have 4 grenades that legitimately look identical here. We've got a Breath of Terramorphous, we've got the Pandemic, we've got a Fire Bee, and a Stormfront, which all look identical, so it's going to be a bit of an awkward one to see when the visual's done, but we will do our best. First, we're going to talk about the Breath of Terramorphous. Now, this has the unique card, as it is the only E-Tech grenade in the game. Pretty interesting. However, it is certainly not a very special grenade. Other than that, it drops from Terramorphous, so it's got an incredibly low drop rate because his pool is super saturated with other unique items from him. And all it does is when you throw this grenade on the floor, instead of doing a fire burst horizontally, it will fire up pillars from the ground, pillars of fire from the ground, which don't really do that much damage. And also, it's randomized where they like hit, so doesn't tend to really hit much of what you're aiming at anyway. For a raid boss drop, this grenade really isn't very good. Fire only element as well restricts it. I'm probably going to put it down in E tier with the Rolling Thunder. It's not really a grenade I'm ever going to recommend using. Next up, we have the Pandemic. This drops from Mortar in Sawtooth Cauldron, and it is a corrosive only grenade. This grenade gets thrown out. Once it explodes, it fires off like 3 child grenades that go around and like leech onto enemies. Basically, the only thing the Pandemic is really good for is spreading dot damage, which again, for characters like Krieg and stuff like that, can be useful, but it really doesn't have very good damage. It's a bit awkward to use. It's not really a grenade I'd particularly recommend using outside of normal mode, so I'd probably stick it in D tier, I want to say. Certainly better than some of these grenades that end up killing you more often than not. So the Pandemic's not totally useless and like these sort of things in E tier, but not really a grenade I'd recommend outside of normal mode. It's not bad for killing your sort of loaders and stuff like that, or spreading dot damage, but not really ideal either. Next, we have more grenades that look the same. This is the Chain Lightning from the Tiny Tina's DLC. This is actually a really good grenade for a few different reasons. This grenade basically throws out a bolt of lightning in an area, and this grenade will like chain to any enemies in the area. Even if the grenade isn't actually hitting an enemy, like the projectile ends up shooting towards an enemy, kind of locks on in a weird electrical way. So it's pretty guaranteed damage, which is good in one sense. And also, this grenade also has the special ability to recharge your grenade ammo, which is actually a really useful effect. There's not that many ways to recharge grenade ammo in the game, sort of excluding the Big Boom Blaster, and then you've just got kill skills on certain classes which allow enemies to drop grenades or get grenades out of loot containers, but to actually just regenerate them without any other effect is pretty handy. The Chain Lightning does that for you, and the most important thing with the Chain Lightning is, like I was talking about these homing bolts, when you're in OP10 and you're using a grog nozzle, this can basically be a free, full health, pretty much instant heal. So to keep you alive in the midst of combat in later game, this Chain Lightning is a really, really damn good grenade. I think there aren't many grenades on this tier list, but I think this is going to be the second one up in S tier. It's a really good grenade, really good. Next, we have the Contraband Skyrocket. And this could be a bit of a controversial opinion of mine. The Skyrocket is definitely OP. There is no doubt in the game that this is an OP grenade. You start with this grenade, I think it's if you buy like the deluxe edition or the handsome collection, anything like that, edition of Borderlands 2, you will start the game with the contraband Skyrocket, and this is a grenade that you can legitimately use to one-shot pretty much every single boss, excluding like loaders and stuff that isn't weak to fire damage. It is fire only. But the thing with the Skyrocket is it scales with your level, so you never have to get rid of this grenade in favor of a new grenade, because it's always going to be good the entire time you're using it throughout the main story. And into TVHM and UVHM, this grenade is always going to be fantastic. And if that was all I had to say, this grenade would be going straight up into S tier. Super strong grenade. It fires forward in an arc pattern and goes up in the air, explodes like a firework. You do tend to kill yourself a little bit, so you have to be a little bit careful when playing it. It's a bit of a technique to get down throwing it. But the issue with this grenade is it does not scale at all into the OP levels, and so by the time you get into the OP levels, this grenade is worthless. Barely does any damage, and certainly is not going to be killing any enemies for you. So if Borderlands was just a game that went to level 80, the Skyrocket would be an S tier grenade. However, unfortunately, OP tiers do exist, or unfortunately for this grenade, I should say, the OP tiers do exist. And so I'm going to put it in A tier. Still a fantastic grenade, but you cannot rely on it in the OP levels because it will not scale past level 80. Next, we have another similar looking grenade, but this one is the Crossfire. This is a Seraph grenade, and you can get this from the Badass Creator, the Torg DLC, in the Seraph vendor. And what's brilliant about this grenade is it's pretty much exactly the same as a Bouncing Bonnie. However, it is very easily target farmed from the vending machine, so you can re-roll this as many times as you want. And the one you're looking for is a longbow 1 second fuse grenade. That's what it's going to look like on the card. Really, that's actually a bug. It's a longbow 0 second, but it just displays as a 1 second fuse. It's been bugged since the start of the game, and it is still bugged. So it will show as 1 second, but it will be a 0 second. And if you get a slag variant of this, the longbow Crossfire is an absolute monster. This is legitimately identical to the Bouncing Bonnie. However, because it is so much easier to farm the specific correct variant that you want, I just have to put this higher than the Bouncing Bonnie. For that reason, I'm going to put it in B tier. It is pretty much exactly the same grenade. One is a Seraph rarity, one is legendary, and one is just a hell of a lot easier to farm. But they basically are doing exactly the same job. A Bouncing Betty that spits out additional Bouncing Betties every 2.5 seconds. But if you just find a normal slag Bouncing Betty, it would be doing the same job as these. So I can't stick them any higher than B tier because there's really not that much special about it. But in terms of the best one you can get, that is going to be the Slag Longbow Crossfire, and that's why it's up in B tier. Next, we have the Fastball. Now, the Fastball was, if you ever played vanilla Borderlands 2, the Fastball was an absolute joke. Barely did any damage, same functionality as it is now. A quick throwing ball, TD grenade in a sort of straight arcing trajectory, like a Fastball in real life, but the Fastball barely did any damage. And so Gearbox decided a few years into the game that they were going to buff its damage, and boy did they buff its damage. This grenade is now one of the absolute most ridiculous grenades in all of Borderlands history, I would say. This Fastball allows you to one-shot like a multitude of bosses all the way up throughout the TVHM and Ultimate Vault mode, and still one-shots enemies in OP10 with the right grenade setups, which is an absolutely insane feat. Not only that, but you can get the Fastball from Bol, which you can get to in about, I don't know, the first half an hour of the game if you're playing at a relative pace. You can have one of the best grenades legitimately right at the start of the game, and it can carry you through multiple levels, and then you can just head back to this nice easy boss to kill him again for another 10% drop chance to get an absolute insane grenade. It comes in every element except for slag, so you can get explosive, lightning, corrosive, and fire, and all of these variants have their great uses in different circumstances. So yeah, it's no surprise the Fastball is going up in S tier. Next we have the Firestorm grenade, another grenade from the Tiny Tina's DLC. It does the same thing as the Chain Lightning, where it will regen your grenade ammo. However, instead of the usefulness of the Chain Lightning, this is only a fire damage weapon, fire damage grenade, and what happens is it drops fireballs from the sky. rains down like this firestorm, as it were, for not great damage. And if the enemy is at all moving, it will probably end up missing by the time, because there's a delay between when the grenade goes off and when the firestorm comes out of the air. So normally by that point the enemy's moved, and if they haven't, if it hits them, it still doesn't do that much damage. But you do get the utility of it being able to regenerate your grenades, which is super useful. So I don't think I can put it any lower than C tier, but if you're going to go for one of the two guys, the Chain Lightning is the one you want to go for. Next up, we have the Fireball Grenade, which is basically just the blue rarity version of the legendary Firestorm Grenade. So you're going to throw out that same fireball, however, this time you're going to get none of the meteors coming from orbit. You're just going to get the initial fireball, which basically is just a worse version of it. It still allows that grenade regeneration, so it does still have that little utility case, but realistically, there's no reason you should be using these fireballs or the standard lightning bolt version of these two legendary grenades. You might as well just be using the legendary. They're basically as difficult to get as well, so it's just, what the hell's the point? So for that reason, I'm going to stick the fireball. I can't put it in F tier because it still has its uses, but there's just no way you should be using this over the legendary variants. I'm going to put it down in E tier. Next, we have the Fluster Cluck. This is a blue rarity bandit grenade awarded from the train robbery in Tundra Express. And it's basically a Merv grenade that, instead of spawning all the grenades when it hits the enemy or when the fuse goes out, it starts spawning the grenades as it travels. So as you can imagine, this grenade ends up being a bit of a clusterfuck, which is where the Fluster Cluck comes into. I know, crazy pun. But puns aside, this grenade isn't very good. It kind of doesn't really do enough damage to warrant it, and half of the Merv grenades are going to miss on the way to the target. So this grenade tends to just not be very useful. I'm going to stick it down in F tier. I can see no world in which I'm using this grenade over just a standard Merv grenade. Okay, it can come in every element, but so can a lot of other grenades. This grenade, there's no reason to ever use it, guys. It sucks. Next on the list, we have the Kiss of Death. This is a reward drop from a mission in Opportunity, Hell Hath No Fury, but also has a very low chance. I think it's like a 1.6% chance to drop from Hyperius to the Invincible, which is a bit random, and I don't really know why that's a thing, but the Kiss of Death is not a great weapon. It's a transfusion grenade, however, it cannot spawn in the slag element, and most of the time your transfusion grenades are utility grenades, and so you want them to be able to slag enemies and heal you in the process. The Kiss of Death is able to heal you, but does not slag enemies. So it's kind of giving you that healing, but not giving you the other utility that you want. I would pretty much use any slag transfusion grenade instead of this grenade. I do not see the purpose of it. You can only get it once from a quest or an incredibly rare chance from Hyperius. You're better off getting a standard transfusion grenade. This grenade sucks. F tier. Speaking of another transfusion grenade that sucks, we have the Leech. This drops from the Warrior as one of its designated loot drops, and this one again cannot come in slag element. It's a transfusion grenade that heals you, does not come in the slag element like the one you'd want, so giving you this healing but not giving you any other utility and not doing great damage in the first place. Its unique effect is once it hits the enemy, it spawns like 6 other grenades that seek out and heal you as well, but realistically it's still not giving you much more healing than a normal transfusion, and with way less of the utility. Straight in F tier. Transfusion grenades are pretty bad in Borderlands 2. There's so many better ways to heal in late game, like using stuff like the Grog Nozzle and things like that, and so if you're using a transfusion grenade, it's normally for the utility of slag and that healing in a pinch. There's really no reason why you'd be using it without that, so that's why it's down in F tier. Next up we have the Lightning Bolt. This is going in the exact same category as the Fireball Grenade. It's just a standard variant of the Chain Lightning, except instead of Chain Lightning to multiple enemies, it just hits one enemy directly. Still allows you to regen the grenade, so there's that slight bit of utility, but there pretty much is no reason you should be using this over the Chain Lightning. Next, we have the Magic Missile, and I talked about slag for utility. The Magic Missile is definitely one of the better grenades for slagging. Yes, I do like my slag transfusion grenades for slagging. They are fantastic. I also love Longbow Singularity grenades for slagging. Again, very good. But the Magic Missile just has something they don't, it's got, once you throw the grenade, 4 projectiles all spawn out and home on enemies and have a guaranteed slag chance if they hit the enemy, which is absolutely amazing. And this comes with the added effect that you get grenade regeneration like all of the other special Tiny Tina's DLC grenades. So grenade regeneration, slag on demand, the slag balls are really good homing. They track really well, which is just absolutely fantastic. So for just like carpet slagging an area in like late game OP levels, there isn't really a better grenade than the magic missile. So I think I'm going to put this up in S tier. As far as slagging grenades go, this is about as good as it gets. Next, we have the standard magic missile. They are both called magic missile. However, one is a purple rarity item and one is a blue rarity item, and they are considered different entities, even though they have got the same name, so I will rank them separately. This is very much the same as the other variants. Why would you not use the higher tier one? However, the purple magic missile can be kind of notoriously difficult to get. I don't know why, it always feels so awkward to get compared to the legendary variants of the other ones. And the actual base magic missile, all it does is just spawn out 2 homing orbs rather than 4. So yes, you're going to get less overall slag chance, but it's still pretty good. Like, if I could not, you know, if I really didn't want to farm for a purple rarity magic missile, the blue rarity is not that bad. I'll put it in D tier, unlike the others that are going in E tier, because the slag utility and regening the grenades is still really good on this blue variant. Yes, you might as well use the purple one if you can, but if that's going to be a pain to get hold of, the blue one's going to serve you pretty well. Oh, I feel like we haven't had an F tier grenade in a while. Let's put another F tier in. This is Captain Blade's Midnight Star Grenade from the Pirates Booty DLC. And yep, straight into F tier. This grenade is a Merv grenade, like other Tor grenades. However, the special curse, which is a variant, which is a theme with all of the Pirates Booty, like, curse-themed weapons, is the Merv grenades, instead of staying at the target, they fly back towards the user, which is just absolutely ridiculous. You kill yourself basically every time you throw this grenade, so I don't know really why you'd ever use it. This is definitely a troll grenade, and good job, Gearbox, because this has killed me definitely a few times in the past. So it's going to go down in F tier, where it belongs. Next up, we have the Quasar, one of 2 grenades that look the same. This is a Singularity grenade, and Singularity grenades are very good indeed. However, this one is only shock element, which does pull it back slightly, because when you get to late game, I tend to prefer slag Singularity grenades. More for their utility factor than their healing factor. If I was going for healing, I'd probably try and priorities, like I say, the Chain Lightning or the Electric Chair nowadays. However, this grenade was for a very long time, probably before these DLCs came out, definitely your best option for that late game Tesla healing. It's a Singularity grenade mixed with the Tesla grenade, so it's going to pull enemies in and then shock the enemies around it. It's a pretty great grenade all in all, but it's fallen off as the years have gone by. It's been power crept by these up in S tier. I'm still going to rank it pretty highly. I'm going to put it in, I'd say, the B tier with some of these other pretty good grenades. I can't really put it any higher than that, since it has been overshadowed recently by these other grenades, but still, all in all, the Quasar is a pretty good grenade. Another problem with the Quasar, however, is it drops from the ultimate badass Varkids, which are obviously an absolute pain to farm, as you can only get them in a few certain areas, and you have to wait until they get to that ultimate variant, the Varkid, to level up, before you're able to kill them. So it's kind of difficult grenade to farm. Mostly you end up finding it in a world drop from a loot midget or a chest, but I'm never too disappointed when one of these comes along. Next, we have the O negative. This drops from Pyro Pete in the Torgs DLC. One of the raid bosses. It is a Seraph rarity grenade, and it is a transfusion grenade. Unlike these other transfusions that do not come in the slag element, this one does, and it spawns out 8 charged grenades that home round and hit enemies and then return health to you. All very good. As far as the transfusion grenade goes, this is about as good as it gets. I can't say that they are my favourite grenades in Borderlands 2, but this one certainly isn't terrible. I'm going to stick it up in B tier with these other pretty good utility grenade. But realistically, it's not doing much more than just a regular purple transfusion grenade, so B tier is where it's going to stay. Next up, we have the Stormfront. This is another Tesla grenade. It drops from the rat enemy side quest from the Bloodshot Stronghold area of the game, and it's a pretty good grenade. It's a Tesla grenade like normal, however, instead of just having the one base grenade, it shoots out like 5 others in an area around it, so you've got better coverage with this grenade. It's very easy to farm because each of the 4 enemies that you kill have a 10% chance to get it. So every run, you've got a 40% chance to acquire this grenade, which is pretty great. And I'd say this is probably one of my more used grenades, definitely throughout normal and TVHM. When you get to UVHM, I tend to target farm some of these better S tier grenades, but certainly for the early game, the Stormfront is a pretty solid grenade. I'm going to stick it up in B tier. Next up, we have the Nasty Surprise, and what a nasty surprise this grenade is whenever you see it in a chest and it turns out to be the Nasty Surprise and not the Quasar. The reason for that is this grenade absolutely sucks. The only ways to obtain this grenade are from killing Vermivorous the Invincible, which is the highest leveled up Varkid, or you get it from a random world drop, like a loot midget or a chest, anything like that, and they can drop the Nasty Surprise, and it is definitely always a nasty surprise when you get it. All this grenade does is you throw it and it will spawn like 6 or 7 child grenades at the enemy's feet, which will blow up and do damage. It can come in any element, but again, by the time the grenades spawn, the enemy tends to move, and also it just doesn't deal any damage at all. The damage on it absolutely stinks. It's one of those grenades that I kept hoping was going to get buffed to do some immense damage, but it never happened, and so it's never going to climb out of F tier. The Nasty Surprise really is a nasty surprise whenever you get it in the game. Next up, we have the Meteor Storm. This is a Seraph grenade. You get it from the badass creator of Badassitude, the Torg DLC, the Seraph vendor there. You can acquire this grenade. If you're a fan of the bonus package, you're definitely going to be a fan of this one. It's a Merv grenade that flies down like a load of different grenades. I think it's like up to 12. It's an absolutely absurd amount. And each one of these grenades, as they explode, spawn another grenade. So you're just getting an absolutely ridiculous amount of Merv grenade action if you like big explosions. This grenade is definitely a fun one to use. It's basically a bonus package, but on steroids. It has like a few more child grenades that it spawns, but it's basically doing the same thing in a similar sort of area as the bonus package. So I feel like it warrants going in the same tier as the bonus package. 2 grenades that look identical, sitting right next to each other. I won't put it any higher than this because it's a Seraph grenade, and so you're going to have to spend these Seraph crystals on it, which are obviously not the easiest things to acquire, so you're spending quite an expensive resource to get it, and it's basically doing the same job as a bonus package. Slightly more child grenades, but not an awful lot more damage in total, so for that reason, I think C tier is pretty fair. And last but not least, we have another grenade that looks like so many of the others, but this one is the Fire Bee, and it is basically a fire burst grenade that does its normal thing, but then shoots out a few additional fireballs in like a direction around it. These tend to not really be that accurate. They tend to not hit that many enemies, so it ends up just being basically a standard fire burst grenade, which aren't terrible, but really aren't that useful outside of sort of normal mode. I don't really see a world in where I'm using the Fire Bee very often at all. It sort of sticks in the same place as a Pandemic, I feel like. You can use it for utilities to sort of build up stacks, but I'm never really going to take this out as one of my primary grenades. I think the Pandemic might have slightly more use because it can home onto enemies and stick into like a wider range of enemies. So I think for that reason, I'm going to stick it down in the E tier. I do not think the Fire Bee is as good as a Pandemic, and it's certainly not as good as some of the other grenades on the list. But I think overall, that is going to be about it. Only one grenade up in the A tier, being the Contraband Skyrocket, but a pretty mediocre spread overall. There's definitely a high disparity between the grenades on Borderlands 2, between the absolutely outrageous grenades compared to the ones that are borderline totally useless. So there it is. That is ranking every single grenade in Borderlands 2. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and let me know what you think about these rankings down below. If you agree with any, if you change any about, please do let me know. And what do you think I should rank next in Borderlands 2? I love to hear your guys' feedback. If you haven't already, guys, please consider dropping a sub to the channel. We are trying super hard to reach 1,000 subs, and I would really appreciate it if you help me on that journey. Leave us a like too if you haven't already, and I will catch you next time. Take care, guys. Goodbye.